Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
She was sitting on a stool in the middle of our bedroom, completely naked. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at, whether my mind was playing tricks on me, or if the shadows were distorting the scene. The curtains were half closed, letting in a slash of fading sunlight across her bare shoulders. Her hair was tousled and clung to the back of her damp neck. When she realized I was standing in the doorway, she jerked her head up. I saw the phone in her trembling hand, the screen still lit, the message thread open. She hurriedly tried to swipe, to delete, to make sure I didn't see what was there. But I'd already read enough. I'll never forget the way she froze in that moment. Her eyes, wide and guilty, darted between me and the phone, as if trying to figure out which was the bigger threat. I could hear her breath catch, her chest rising and falling too quickly. She parted her lips, maybe to explain or to beg, but no sound came out. The fan overhead stirred the suffocating air, and my own heart felt as though it had lodged itself in my throat. I wanted to look away from her body, to preserve what little dignity might remain. But my gaze kept flicking to the bruise on her thigh, a vivid reminder that I wasn't the only one who'd touched her recently. For a moment, I didn't move. I stood there, keys still in my hand, the car engine outside still ticking as it cooled. The dryness in my mouth felt like I'd swallowed a handful of sand. She swallowed. "Mike," she whispered, forcing a thin, shaky smile. But I didn't let her finish. I couldn't. My breath was coming fast, and it felt like the air itself was dipped in kerosene. One spark from her lips, and the whole room would go up in flames. So I turned away, letting her scramble for her robe, letting her panic in that small circle of light. Behind me, the hallway felt too bright, too normal. The family photos on the wall stared back at me, us in happier times, celebrating birthdays and anniversaries, with forced grins and staged hugs. She rushed after me, clothes hastily thrown on, phone in hand. "It's not what you think," she said, voice trembling. I clenched my jaw. "Rebecca, don't." I had no patience for hollow explanations. She'd been sitting there, naked, phone loaded with messages from someone else. She was so sure I wouldn't come home this early. This was meant to be her private moment, her time to erase the evidence of her affair. I could see it all over her face. The fear, the shock, the sudden realization that her comfortable lie was no longer safe. She reached out, touched my shoulder, but I shrugged her off. Inside my chest, something felt like it was ripping apart, but on the outside, I just kept walking down the hall. I didn't scream. I didn't hit her. I didn't throw any furniture. That might have been easier, for both of us, than this silent, deliberate calm. Because in those few seconds, that calm was like a thick wedge of ice lodged in my veins. By the time I reached our living room, I heard her footsteps behind me. She didn't bother turning on the lights. The place was wrapped in a warm dusk. She fumbled to pull on some clothes, a t-shirt of mine, the hem barely reaching the top of her thighs. The fact that she chose my shirt in that moment almost made me laugh. It was so obviously desperate, as if covering herself in my clothing would hide her betrayal. "Mike," she said again, softly, pleading. "Please." I stopped and turned. The stale air hovered between us. She tried to meet my eyes, but I felt that old instinct, to look away, to let her tears break me down. But not this time. Not after what I'd seen on her phone. And not after the earlier messages I'd already found weeks ago. The ones that made my stomach churn, but that I told myself might be innocent. They hadn't been. Her expression told me everything. "I came home," I said, voice low, "to grab a document for tomorrow's meeting. Didn't realize I'd be walking into this." I raised my hand, as though the phone was still there, like I was holding an invisible piece of evidence. Her eyes welled up, and she clutched the t-shirt closer around her. I was just texting a friend." "Cut the shit," I snapped, and my voice cracked on the last word. The tension inside me had to release somehow. "Stop lying to me." She stared at the floor, tears hanging off her lashes. Her hair was still messy, those faint lines on her skin that only appear after you've been entangled with someone else. I tried not to see it. I tried not to picture the hands that had left that bruise. But the image invaded my mind anyway, flashing red hot. Then she started crying, shoulders trembling in the half-light. Each sob felt like a needle pricking at my composure. I wanted to shout, to unleash every ounce of betrayal in my heart. But instead, I just took a slow breath, tensing my jaw until it ached. My father used to tell me a man shouldn't cry. Don't give them the satisfaction, he said. A real man keeps control. And now I could hear that voice echo in my head, forcing me not to cave, not to collapse. She crumpled forward, trying to grab my hand. I'm sorry, she sobbed. Please, I'm so sorry. I pulled back. Sure, I muttered. You're sorry now that you got caught. Her face twisted with guilt and desperation, and she started to babble something about the yoga retreat, how it was never supposed to go this far, how she didn't mean to hurt me. I just stared at her. I was so close to either screaming or laughing, both impulses equally mad. My mind replayed the messages I'd read. The endless string of sweet nothings, the pictures, his name, Mark. She typed it over and over. My wife, my Becky, with a man named Mark, sending each other photos I could barely look at without wanting to break something. She kept crying, and I realized the living room lights were still off. We were just silhouettes now, locked in a silent battleground of blame and heartbreak. Finally, I turned on a lamp, letting a dull glow settle between us. She squinted, blinking tears. I saw the wet track along her cheeks, the trembling of her lips, and I felt a pang of pity so strong it threatened to overshadow everything else. But the wave of betrayal slammed into me harder. Mike, she said, voice cracking, I love you. I almost laughed at that. A short, humorless burst of air. Yeah, I said. That's obvious. And with that, I walked out the front door, keys still in my hand. She didn't chase after me. She stood there, stunned, maybe too wrapped in shame to move. Or maybe she thought I needed a moment alone. Part of me wanted her to chase me. Part of me wanted her to show she cared enough to fight. But I also wasn't ready to look at her face a second longer. Outside, night had settled in, the stars hidden by the city's orange haze. I got in my car and drove aimlessly. I wanted to outrun the images in my head. Her naked on that stool, the messages, the bruises that I hadn't given her. My mouth tasted bitter, like rust. I drove down the highway until the outskirts of Denver blurred into open roads. I ended up by an overlook where the city lights sprawled below, a glowing net over the darkness. That's where I turned off the engine, letting the stillness crawl in. For a long while, I just sat there, hand curled around the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I was torn between 1,000 impulses, to pick a fight with her lover, to pack my things and never come back, to drink until I forgot my name. But eventually, I did something else. I scrolled through my phone, looked at pictures of us from the good days, birthdays, road trips, lazy Sundays with coffee and newspapers. Then I found the proof, her texts to him. She'd been careless enough to sign into her email on my device once, or maybe she'd never thought I'd look. They'd met before the yoga retreat. She said it started with an innocent conversation, some photography project he was working on, a short film for his portfolio. She'd offered to model. So she did. The pictures on my phone told a different story. I could see the tension in her eyes, the flush in her cheeks. I could see how she glowed around him, how she pressed herself against him, how her hair was messy in that half-dressed way. My breath came quick and shallow again. I felt a deep, trembling rage in my stomach. But I didn't cry. A man doesn't cry, right? Eventually, I went home. Past midnight by then. I found her sitting on the couch, eyes swollen, phone dead on the coffee table. She looked up like a child expecting punishment. I slipped off my shoes and just stood by the door, staring at her. She started to say something. My name, maybe. But her voice broke again. "I'm sleeping in the guest room," I said. She nodded, tears dripping down her chin. That was our entire conversation for the night. I went to the guest room, closed the door, locked it. I lay awake in a bed that wasn't mine, staring at the ceiling until my thoughts blurred. At some point, I drifted off and dreamed about the bruise on her thigh. The next morning, I woke feeling numb. The house was quiet. The air smelled of stale coffee. I found her in the kitchen, fully dressed in her old jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back neatly, as though that might bring some semblance of normalcy. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "I need you to pack," I said. "Go to your mother's place, or go anywhere else. I need space." She swallowed. "Mike, please. We need to talk." "Pack," I repeated, voice low, resolute. I didn't shout. I didn't call her names. I just gave her a look that I hoped conveyed the storm inside me. Then I left for work without breakfast, slamming the door behind me. Outside, the morning sun was bright and cheerful, a mocking contrast to the black cloud in my chest. Work was a blur. Meetings, phone calls, spreadsheets, none of it registered in my head. My coworkers asked if I was all right. They noticed I was pale and withdrawn. I just nodded and forced a half smile. Around noon, I locked myself in my office, pulled up her Instagram on my computer. She posted nothing. No pictures from her retreat, no updates. She used to be so active, but now her feed was static and silent. I typed a few words in her DMs, pretending to be her, just to see if he, Mark, would respond. A minute later, my screen pinged. He wrote, "I miss you. Are you home now? Is it safe to talk?" My stomach twisted. It was so brazen, so casual. My vision blurred with red fury. I typed back, "Not now. Everything's messed up." A few more seconds passed. Then he replied, "We need to figure this out. I don't want you to ruin your life because of me." Another dagger to the gut. I responded with a single message, "Don't worry. I'll handle it." Then I sat there, staring at those words. Something dark and potent was boiling in my gut. A sense of humiliation and rage that demanded an outlet. I glanced at my reflection in the black monitor screen, noticing the tightness in my jaw, the cold determination in my eyes. A thought flickered into my mind, and I shuddered at how logical it felt. They humiliated me. I can humiliate them back. By the time I got home, the house felt oddly still. Her suitcases were gone. A note lay on the table. "I'll give you time, but we need to talk." I tossed the note aside. I realized my hands were shaking. I went into the bedroom, our bedroom, and found the bed made, the curtains drawn, the mirror polished. She'd left a few photographs scattered on my nightstand, probably by accident. Pictures of us in Paris, by the fireplace back home. A silly selfie at a friend's wedding. Memories that once made me smile. Now they just felt like evidence of a lie. I'd discovered more than texts. I'd found emails between them, plans for secret meetups, jokes about me, her husband. She told him I was clueless, that I was too busy with work to notice. Like I was some knave puppy who didn't realize he was being kicked. I scooped up the photos and started placing them everywhere. Under glass tabletops, inside drawers, pinned behind cupboard doors. I wanted to surround her with those memories, force her to see every moment we'd once cherished. Let her feel the weight of her betrayal. She came back 3 days later, tanned from her so-called yoga retreat, hair shining, wearing a loose-fitting sweater over yoga pants, carrying a single suitcase. I knew the moment she stepped into the house, she realized something was off. The pictures were everywhere, staring at her like accusing eyes. She went pale. I watched from the armchair in the corner, arms folded, saying nothing. She paused, scanning the living room, her gaze flicking over the photo from our trip to the mountains, her laugh so carefree, my arm around her waist, the dog between us. She swallowed, setting down her bag. Then she moved toward the kitchen. Another photo taped to the fridge. She tried to pull it off, but her hands shook. Finally, she turned to me, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this?" I said nothing. I just watched her. She bit her lower lip, then noticed a small camcorder resting on the side table, the red light blinking. Her eyes went wide. She looked back at me, dread coloring her face. "Mike," she whispered, "you're filming me." I gave a single nod. My phone was in my lap, streaming that footage to a private account. I was capturing everything. Her confusion, her shame, the tears pooling in her eyes. She covered her mouth with one hand. She looked fragile, breakable. For a second, my resolve wavered. I nearly stood up, walked over, and held her. But then I remembered the bruise on her thigh, the messages, the way she'd called me clueless. She moved through the house, discovering photos in her desk drawers, in her jewelry box, taped to the inside of her makeup mirror. Each one was like a physical slap in the face. By the time she made it back to the living room, her chin was trembling. I heard her breath catch. "You're scaring me," she said, voice cracking. I picked up my phone, opened TikTok, scrolled through the clips I'd recorded the past few days. Little commentaries about betrayal, about how a cheating wife looks when she thinks no one's watching. My own silent confession to the world. One day down with my cheating wife. Day 2. She texted him again. Day 3. She's trying to come back. I'd put music to them, added subtitles quoting her excuses, a kind of twisted chronicle of my heartbreak, served ice cold for social media consumption. She saw the screen, recognized the interface, and her face drained of color. "Mike," she breathed. "What? What are you doing?" I stood up, stepping toward her. She flinched. That hurt me more than I care to admit, but I let it slide. "You said I was clueless," I said, voice quiet, even. "A knave puppy, right? So here's your knave puppy, showing the world just how clueless he is." Tears slid down her cheeks. "You can't. Please don't do this to me." I shrugged. "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just documenting the truth." She opened her mouth, but no words came. She crumpled into a sob, covering her face with her hands. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her how much she'd hurt me, to lash out. But I forced myself to remain calm. I took another step, holding the phone so it captured her breakdown in full view. A heaviness pressed on my chest as I realized just how twisted the situation had become. She slid to the floor, knees pulled up. I set the phone down on the side table, the camera still recording. Then I kneeled in front of her, gently removed her hands from her face. Her cheeks were damp, her eyes bloodshot. She inhaled a shaky breath. I could smell her perfume, the same scent she used to wear for me. The same perfume she'd probably worn for him. It felt like inhaling glass shards. "Where's the box?" she asked softly, voice muffled with tears. I frowned. "What box?" Her eyes flicked up to mine, despair swirling there. "The one with the letters. The one I wrote you in college, remember? And the postcards. And all the keepsakes. Where is it?" It took me a moment to recall the old cardboard box where we kept notes and souvenirs, little bits of our history. I narrowed my eyes. "Why?" She shuddered, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. "Because I want to destroy it. I can't stand looking at any of it. I can't stand feeling this guilt." I stared at her. Part of me wanted to say no, to keep those memories locked away. Another part wanted to watch her burn them, to see her physically erase the love we once shared. So I stood, went into the closet, rifled through the shelves, until I found the tattered box taped up on top. I returned to the living room, dropped it in front of her. She lifted the lid, rummaged through the letters, the pictures, the little trinkets we'd saved. I watched her tears fall onto the envelopes. Then, abruptly, she stood, carried the box to the fireplace, and started tossing everything inside, handful by handful. She grabbed a lighter, flicked the flame, and set it all ablaze. For a second, I felt a pang of panic. That was a piece of our history, the story of how we met, how we fell in love. But the panic was smothered by a deeper satisfaction. She was burning every trace of us, turning our marriage into ash. She sobbed, big gasping breaths, as the fire roared and crackled. I stepped closer, phone in hand, capturing her face in the reflection of the flames. She shot me a look that was equal parts horror and heartbreak. But she didn't beg me to stop filming. Maybe she was past that. Maybe she believed she deserved it. When the fire died down, only charred scraps remained. The living room stank of smoke and old paper. She stood there, face streaked with tears, hair disheveled, trembling. I turned off the recorder, feeling an odd hollowness in my chest. This was supposed to make me feel better, but it didn't. I was still drowning in betrayal. I left her there by the fireplace and went upstairs to my office. She followed me after a few minutes. "Mike," she whispered, stepping inside. "I want to explain. I want to tell you how it all started." I sank into my desk chair, folded my arms. My heart pounded a little faster, but I kept my face neutral. "Go ahead." She shifted on her feet. Mark, he's a photographer. You know that. I was just going to model for a small shoot, nothing serious. Then we talked a lot. I felt appreciated. You were always so busy, always at work or in your own head. I just wanted to feel close to someone. She paused, tears glinting in the corners of her eyes. "I love you." I never stopped. But I felt like you weren't there anymore. I tightened my jaw. "So sleeping with him was your solution?" She winced. "I'm not proud of it. I was lonely. We had this chemistry, and..." She swallowed. "It was never meant to be a real relationship, I swear." My chest felt tight, anger coiling in my stomach. "So I'm just some placeholder for you. Some cardboard cutout you can replace whenever you're bored." She shook her head. "No, that's not it. She bit her lip, struggling. "I'm sorry. I know I hurt you. I know I've ruined everything. But I needed to feel alive, and I didn't know how else to do it." A wave of disgust rolled through me. "I needed to feel alive," I repeated softly. "You realize how pathetic that sounds." She tried to step closer, but I raised a hand, signaling her to keep her distance. We stared at each other for a long, charged moment. Then she started to sob again. I turned away, focusing on the closed blinds, the quiet hum of the computer fan. I half wished she would stop crying, but at the same time, her tears felt like the only justice I had at the moment. Days turned into weeks. We lived under the same roof, but it felt like a minefield. She tiptoed around my moods, trying to do little chores, cooking dinners she thought might soften me. But I kept my distance, filming her from time to time, capturing those private moments of guilt and sorrow. My TikTok account, 100 Days with a Cheating Wife, gained a trickle of anonymous followers. Strangers commented, urging me to kick her out, to divorce her, to get revenge. Some told me to reconcile, that everyone deserves a second chance. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications. She saw at once the feed on my phone. The little vertical videos of her walking around the house, cleaning tearfully, rummaging through a drawer with trembling hands. There was a track of melancholic music behind it, plus captions mocking her excuses. She sank to the floor and sobbed until her voice cracked. I stepped over her, letting the camera roll. I felt numb, but a twisted sense of vindication kept me going. In the quiet evenings, I'd intercept her emails, her Instagram messages, her phone calls. She tried to contact Mark a few times, telling him it was over, that she had to fix her marriage. He wrote back, apologizing, saying he didn't want her to ruin her life. So I pinned that message at the top of her profile, letting everyone see his words. A humiliating public confession that she might be losing everything for him. Meanwhile, I barely slept. When I did manage to doze off, I'd dream of them together. Tangled sheets, breathy whispers, her smiling in a way she'd stopped smiling at me months ago. Then I'd jerk awake, heart pounding, rage pulsing in my veins. Still, I never yelled or threw things. I never threatened violence. Instead, I waged a war of psychological attrition, day after day. I was calm, methodical, unstoppable in my quiet fury. She started losing weight. Her eyes grew hollow, her skin lost that post-retreat glow. She woke up crying some nights, wandering the house as though searching for an escape route. Meanwhile, I found myself lashing out at random moments, slamming the fridge door, glaring at her across the living room. Then I'd retreat into my phone, uploading another snippet to TikTok. Day 15. She's cooking dinner, but her eyes are dead. Day 16. She tried to talk to me again, but I turned on the camera. People online followed my updates like it was a twisted reality show. They left comments like, "She deserves this," or "Man, you're going too far." But I ignored them all, forging ahead with my own brand of revenge. One evening, I came home from work to find her by the fireplace again. The smell of ash and burned paper clung to the room like a bad memory. She gathered some final items, wedding photos, old diaries, ready to burn. She lit a match, watched the flame dance at the tip. Then she paused, as though hesitating. The match burned down to her fingertips, and she hissed, throwing it into the fire. I set down my briefcase. "What the hell are you doing?" She turned, eyes rimmed red. "What do you think?" Her voice was hoarse. "There's nothing left to save, is there?" My anger flared. "So you just burn everything you can't handle?" Her shoulders shook, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Mike, I can't live like this anymore. Please, either forgive me or—" She didn't finish that sentence, but I saw the plea in her eyes. "Either forgive me or let me go." I stood there, a cold weight pressing on my chest. I wanted to say I needed more time, that the wound was too raw. But the truth was, part of me didn't want to forgive her at all. Part of me wanted to see her suffer. She must have seen that in my eyes because she let out a choked sob, turned, and tossed the wedding photo into the fire. I heard the crackle as the edges curled, the corners turning black. The golden letters on the album cover melted into a distorted swirl. I watched the moment we said, "I do," vanish in flames. And I still didn't cry. The following weekend, Mark's name lit up her phone again. I happened to be near the counter when the screen buzzed. It displayed a short text. "I'm in town. Can we talk?" My stomach clenched. She was in the living room, vacuuming. Without a second thought, I picked up her phone, went into the hallway. I typed back, using her words. "Come over. I'll leave the door unlocked." A few minutes later, I told her I was going out for a drive. She looked at me warily, trying to read my face. I gave nothing away. Then I slipped into the garage, waited in my car with the lights off, watching the front door through the rearview mirror. 20 minutes later, his silhouette appeared, tall and lean in the porch light. He hesitated, then opened the door, just like I'd promised. I stayed in the car, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to charge in, confront him physically, but a larger part wanted something else. To let them both feel that same tension I'd been living with for weeks. So I watched numb adrenaline coursing through me as the front door remained ajar. I imagined them inside, talking in hushed voices, maybe hugging, maybe more. My thoughts spiraled, images forming of them locked together in the hallway, just like she and I used to do. When I finally got out of the car, my entire body trembled with the need to act. I went to the door, stepping inside silently. The living room was empty, the vacuum lying on its side. I walked through the kitchen. Then I heard voices upstairs, hushed, urgent, full of tension. My mouth went dry. Slowly, I climbed each step, pulse hammering so loud I was sure they could hear it. They were in the bedroom, the door slightly ajar. I paused just outside. Their words filtered through to me. "I'm sorry," she was saying, her voice shaky. "I can't do this anymore, Mark." He murmured something I didn't catch. Then, softly, "I never wanted to come between you and your husband, but I can't stop thinking about you. She made a choked sound. "I love him," she said. "But everything is so broken now. You shouldn't have come." I heard the rustle of movement. Maybe he stepped closer to her, maybe placed a hand on her shoulder. I braced my weight against the wall, forcing myself not to burst in. She let out a shaky breath, repeated, "I can't do this." A lump clogged my throat. I realized I wanted to see what they'd do next. That twisted curiosity overshadowed my anger. I leaned forward, peering through the gap in the door. He stood in front of her, face drawn. She looked like a cornered animal, tear tracks on her cheeks, arms wrapped around herself. He reached for her hands, but she pulled back. Then, in a sudden surge of movement, she pressed against him, burying her face in his chest, shoulders shaking. He wrapped his arms around her, murmuring something against her hair. The sight of them together brought a wave of sickness to my stomach. My hand clenched around my phone, which was already in camera mode. I recorded a few seconds, her crying into his chest, his hand stroking her back. My throat burned. That was enough. I shoved the door open, stepping inside. She jerked away from him with a gasp, eyes wide, face streaked with horror. He flinched, holding his hands up. I couldn't help noticing the faint bruise on her thigh, mostly faded now, like a ghost of what they'd shared. My stomach twisted with fury. "So," I said quietly, "this is what you two do when I'm not around." She shook her head violently. "No. Mike, please. It's not what." He stepped forward, his posture uncertain. "Listen, man, I didn't come here to—" "Shut up," I spat, my voice low and dangerously calm. I lifted my phone, showing them both the recording. His face paled. Her breathing went ragged. I knew I had them pinned in that moment, both guilty, both caught. "You think I'm clueless," I hissed. "You think you can just walk in here, hold my wife, and I won't notice." She raised her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mark, go," she pleaded, glancing at him. "Please, just go. Don't make this worse." He looked torn, but then he locked eyes with me. A mixture of guilt and defiance etched into his features. "I'm sorry," he said, voice trembling slightly. "I never meant for this to happen," I scoffed. "You never meant for this to happen. Then why are you in my bedroom, holding my wife?" He had no answer. She hovered between us, chest heaving, tears silent now. Finally, he cleared his throat, stepped back. "I'm leaving," he said quietly. He turned to her, opened his mouth like he wanted to say something else, then closed it. He brushed past me, heading for the stairs. I let him go. I stood perfectly still, listening to his footsteps vanish. A moment later, the front door slammed. I turned to her. "Rebecca," I said, voice hoarse. "Tell me the truth. Is he the only one?" She stared at me, eyes wide with shock and heartbreak. "God, Mike, yes. He's the only one." I looked away, my breath ragged, the phone still recording. A part of me wanted to keep filming forever, to capture every tear, every confession. But another part of me felt sick and hollow. My revenge had spiraled into something monstrous, and I wasn't sure I recognized myself anymore. She sank onto the edge of the bed, head bowed. I stood by the door, uncertain. Then I walked over to the window, pressed my forehead against the glass. Outside, the streetlights glowed in neat rows, and for a fleeting second, I thought about how, just a year ago, we were an ordinary couple. How everything had changed so fast. "I don't know what to do," she said softly behind me. "I can't fix this. I've tried apologizing, tried burning our memories. You hate me now, and maybe you have every right to." My chest tightened. "I don't hate you," I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty. "I hate what you did." She nodded. A long silence followed. Then she whispered, "Do you still love me?" I sucked in a breath, swallowed hard. My reflection in the glass stared back, hollow-eyed, lips thin. The question echoed in my mind. Do I still love her? I remembered our early days, the excitement, the laughter, the sense of partnership. Then I remembered the stool, her naked body, her panic, the messages she tried to erase, the bruise, Mark's arms around her. Finally, I turned and walked toward her. She looked up, eyes gleaming. My phone was still in my hand. I lifted it, hovered a finger over the record button. Then, in a sudden motion, I ended the recording. For a moment, she seemed to exhale in relief. Her shoulders sagged, like a heavy weight had been lifted. She tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. "I can't do this," I whispered. "I can't keep living in this constant loop." She bit her lip. "I'll go," she said. "If that's what you want. I'll leave tonight." I stared at her, memories colliding in my head. "You already left me a long time ago," I said, voice trembling. "The day you chose him." She closed her eyes, tears leaking out. Then she stood, grabbing her purse, phone, jacket. She didn't say another word, just walked out of the room. I followed her to the door in silence. She turned the knob, paused, glancing back at me with a final pleading look. I felt something twist in my chest, but I kept my face cold. She blinked away tears, stepped outside, and pulled the door shut behind her. I listened to her footsteps fade on the front porch, listened to the quiet hum of her car engine starting. Then she was gone. The house felt empty without her. For days, I wandered the rooms, half expecting to see her cleaning or cooking or crying in a corner. But she wasn't there. The photos I'd taped everywhere hung like ghosts, reminding me of what was lost. My phone was full of recordings, clips from TikTok, messages, confessions. Sometimes I'd watch them late at night, my chest tightening. The world online was still hungry for updates. Day 25, day 30, day 45. Where's your cheating wife? I read the comments, some supportive, some vicious. But I stopped posting. The videos felt hollow now, a reflection of my own bitterness. I realized I had no interest in continuing that spectacle. One evening, nearly 3 weeks after she left, she sent a text. "We need to finalize everything. Let's meet." My heart lurched. I typed back, "Fine." And we agreed on a coffee shop near downtown. When I arrived, she was already seated in a quiet corner, wearing a simple blouse and jeans, hair pulled back. She looked tired but composed, as though she'd finally gotten some rest. I slid into the chair across from her. The air was thick with the smell of roasted beans and the murmur of distant conversations. She studied me for a moment, then offered a tentative smile. I noticed a fresh bruise on her arm, small but visible. My stomach twisted. Was it Mark again, or had she just bumped into something? I wasn't sure I had the right to ask. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "I'm staying at a friend's place. I don't know what your plans are. About the house, about us." I let out a slow breath. "I'm not sure either." My voice sounded hollow. "I guess we should talk about next steps, whether we're heading for divorce, or a separation, or if there's any chance we—" I trailed off, swallowing. Her eyes glistened. "I won't blame you if you file. This is my fault." We sat there for a moment, the tension like a coiled spring. Then she reached across the table, palm up. I stared at her hand for a long time, not moving. "This is the last time I'll ask you," she said, voice trembling. "Can you forgive me, or is that impossible now?" My throat felt tight. All the anger, betrayal, and heartbreak roiled inside me like a storm. But I also remembered the vow I once made, to love her in sickness and in health, for better or worse. I blinked, turning my gaze toward the window. It was late afternoon. The sunlight caught the edges of the table, illuminating the dust motes floating between us. "I don't know," I finally said. "I can't promise I'll ever forget what you did. And I can't promise I can go back to how things were." She nodded, tears threatening to spill. "I understand." I stared at her hand, still extended. Slowly, I placed mine atop hers. Her skin was cool, delicate. We sat there in silence, 1,000 unspoken words swirling around us. Part of me wanted to pull her close, to bury my face in her hair and inhale the familiar scent of home. Another part of me wanted to bolt out the door and never look back. "You humiliated me," I whispered, leaning closer so only she could hear. "You broke my trust. I don't know how to heal that." She bit her lip, a tear slipping down. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, even if it means letting you go." Something inside me cracked. A wave of sadness rushed in, overshadowing the anger. I realized that beneath all the rage was a profound sense of loss, a loss of the woman I thought I knew, the future I envisioned. I lowered my head, letting out a shaky breath. I still didn't cry, but I came close. She watched me, eyes glassy. "Let's take time," she said. "We don't have to decide everything now. Let's just breathe." I swallowed and nodded. We spent the next hour discussing logistics, how to handle our finances, whether to keep the house, how to split our belongings for the time being. The conversation felt surreal, like we were business partners negotiating a deal rather than a married couple. Eventually, she gathered her purse, said she had to go. I stood, walked her out. The sun was dipping below the skyline, turning the streets gold and purple. She hesitated by her car, then turned to me. "Thank you," she whispered, voice trembling, "for at least meeting with me." I nodded, not trusting my voice. She got in, drove away. I stood on the sidewalk, watching her taillights fade, an ache gnawing at my chest. I realized that no matter how furious I'd been, no matter how deep her betrayal cut, there was still a piece of me that wanted her. The war inside me refused to end. A few more weeks passed. I stayed in the house, though it felt like a tomb. I'd look at the pictures I hadn't yet burned or hidden, remembering the laughter and the warmth. At times I wanted to smash them all, but I refrained. The messages from my 100 days with a cheating wife feed piled up, but I never posted another video. Without her presence, the revenge felt empty. I thought about Mark, where he was, whether they still talked. I knew I had the power to humiliate him further, to ruin his professional life by sending those incriminating photos to his clients. But the effort felt meaningless now. My anger had burned hot and fast, and only ashes remained. One evening, a final text came from her. "I'm going to my mother's for a while. Let's talk again when I get back." I typed back, "Fine." Then I put my phone down and stared at the walls until darkness swallowed the house. It was around that time I realized I had to decide what I wanted. Did I want to keep punishing her? Did I want to savage Mark's life? Or did I want to find a way forward, maybe alone, maybe with her, maybe just in some raw acceptance of the pain? I felt the old lessons from my father. A real man doesn't cry. A real man doesn't show weakness. Yet in the quiet nights, I found myself sobbing soundlessly, my chest shaking with a grief I couldn't name. It wasn't heartbreak alone. It was the dismantling of my pride, my identity as her husband, my sense of safety in the world. On the 99th day, a friend asked me out for a drink. We sat in a dimly lit bar, the smell of whiskey and old leather reminding me of the nights I'd have a celebratory glass after a promotion. He asked how I was holding up. I told him the truth. I was lost, stuck in a loop of anger and sadness. He nodded, a sympathetic frown on his face. "You gotta ask yourself," he said, leaning forward, "what's your endgame? Holding on to hate just kills you from the inside." I sipped my whiskey, feeling its slow burn. Easier said than done. He shook his head, swirling the ice in his glass. "Sure, but at some point, you have to let go of the fantasy that things can be undone." "They can't." His words echoed in my mind as I drove home. The house was dark, the porch light off. I stood in the living room, flicked on a lamp, saw the old pictures still taped in odd places, a montage of happiness that no longer felt real. And in that moment, I made a decision. I pulled them all down, one by one, tossed them in a plastic bin. Then I went through my phone, deleting every TikTok clip, every humiliating post. I removed the pinned messages on her profile, blocked Mark, changed the passwords back. I ended the show I'd created, the public revenge spectacle that had consumed me. It didn't heal me instantly, but it was a step. On the 100th day, she came back to collect some things. This time, I didn't record her. I didn't put the photos everywhere for her to stumble upon. I just let her enter, gather her belongings, move quietly from room to room. She found me in the living room, sitting on the couch, hands folded. She was wearing a plain black sweater, her eyes wary. She looked at me, noticing the empty walls, the missing pictures. "You took them down," she whispered. I nodded. I did. Her eyes welled up with tears. She bit her lip, then set down her box of clothes, crossing the room to me. I watched as she lowered herself onto the couch, leaving a few inches of space between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "Mike," she said softly, "I don't know if we can ever go back. But I want you to know I'm sorry. Truly." I said nothing. My chest felt tight. She reached out, tentatively, placing her hand on top of mine. I looked down at our hands, seeing how her fingers trembled. Then I let out a slow breath and turned my palm upward, lacing my fingers through hers. She inhaled sharply, a quiet sob shuddering through her. "That doesn't mean everything's okay," I murmured. "But I can't keep living in hate." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I understand." We sat there, hands entwined, neither one sure what tomorrow would bring. Outside, the sun was setting, casting the room in golden shadow. I thought about the promise I made on our wedding day. I thought about the man I used to be, the knave puppy she'd once called me in front of Mark. And I thought about the monster I'd become, filming her tears, plastering her shame online, wanting her to feel my pain. All of it was swirling in my head, and yet a strange calm settled over me. Maybe we wouldn't survive this. Maybe we would. But for this moment, we were just two broken people, trying to find any thread of comfort in the wreckage. I felt the burn in my eyes, the ache in my chest. Slowly, I exhaled, letting it all flow through me. The humiliation, the vengeance, the sorrow. In the end, a man doesn't have to cry for the pain to exist. It just settles in, like a bruise on the soul. And maybe, just maybe, it can heal if we let it. She leaned her head on my shoulder, tears still falling silently. I stayed very still, heart pounding. I felt no grand sense of victory or closure, only the fragile beginnings of something that might be forgiveness or acceptance. The last rays of sunlight stretched across the living room floor, illuminating the very spot where she once burned our memories. Now it was just empty space, echoing with all that we'd lost. We sat there until the light faded completely, not speaking, letting the quiet speak for us. And for the first time in 100 days, I allowed myself to hope that maybe life could continue. Not the same life we had, but something else, something raw, something real. Maybe it would be broken forever, or maybe we could piece together a new shape from the shards. I didn't know. But as the darkness settled around us, I didn't pull away. And neither did she.